Hey Stinkies, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, hi, I'm Kruzadar, aka Cruz, and as you can tell by the title, I got a little bit of closed beta testing, some early access stuff for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I'm ecstatic to show you guys. I've never gotten to do something like this with Assassin's Creed, and if you don't know, my rundown is I've been playing since AC2. I've played every single one after that, and I do like the franchise, even though there's some things that I don't entirely agree with. And I want to let you guys know my thoughts on how I thought the Valhalla closed beta testing went, now that we're able to talk about it. So, very excited to show you guys everything. If you don't know how closed beta testing works, you've essentially got a blocked off time slot, and you're limited to a certain section of gameplay that you're allowed to do with single player RPGs. So, I only got to see so much. I'm not going to completely reiterate everything that I have discussed previously in the reaction trailer for the gameplay that came out, I would say a couple months ago now by this point, which I will have linked down below. I'll discuss things that I thought were major improvements, things that I'm excited to see that have changed, and things that I thought were noteworthy that we didn't really get to see too much yet, or that I didn't think was made very public knowledge, because there were some things that were in there that I didn't entirely hear from every single outlet that I thought was neat. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get us into this video. There's 4 major points for this one that I'm going to be going over with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and that's going to be visuals, character dynamics, the story bit that I got to see, and the gameplay itself. Obviously, there's a bunch of other sections that I'll go into, but those are the 4 main things that I'm going to be discussing in this video. First off, visuals. The one thing I'm going to skip over, because they didn't discuss it too much in the gameplay trailer, and it came out later on, was if you didn't know, Eivor's gender is able to be swapped at any point on the main menu. The storyline supposedly isn't supposed to alter too much, so say you start off with the male version of Eivor, at any point in the game you want to go ahead and switch to the female version, you're able to do that at the main menu screen. That also being said, Eivor's appearance is also, gender aside, you're able to alter at any point too. We've already kind of known that with the tattoos, but I didn't know you were going to be able to completely change hairstyles if you wanted to in hair color. We were only shown a couple different options in the game itself. I'm curious, considering you can scroll down a bit, if there's going to be more options later on that you unlock with Eivor as well, but it did look pretty neat. I was pretty surprised that I didn't expect different hairstyle options to be in there at all. The tattoos did look pretty neat as well, so I'm excited to see what ones you're going to be able to unlock. I'm curious if there's going to be any like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood dedicated ones aside from anything Nordic. So the biggest up close thing with the graphics wise that I think needs to be fixed at this point is going to be the hair in game. Even though it's really only minor touch-ups for the most part that seem to be needed in the game, there's a little bit more of a, I would say, quote-unquote major one that are the horses. So it doesn't look like I'm riding around on a realistic horse with Lego hair. Really not that big of a deal, something that's pretty easy to fix. But ultimately, the graphics come down to personal preference. It's obvious it's the same engine that's being used as the previous 2 games, so there's only so much that can be changed in that aspect. The scenery, though, is gorgeous. We all kind of expected the English and Nordic scenery to look nice, but man, is it breathtaking. In terms of colors and whatnot, I'd side that this is close behind aesthetically pleasingness of Black Flag and Odyssey. Though I think a lot of it looking nice comes down to the varying colors and terrain of the region. Even though it looks good, my biggest concern still lies for the release date for optimization, especially being on the same engine. You don't truly get a good look on a single-player role-playing game on a closed scenario beta test, obviously, especially since it was on console. Odyssey and Origins had horrible optimization and crashing bugs, so I'm still weary of how finished Valhalla is going to end up being. It looked nice during the test, but I don't think we should get our hopes up, at least on the PC side of things, I should say. All in all, for graphics, if Ubisoft can release an optimized game, the graphics really will look nice and be enjoyable. The UI for Valhalla is, in my opinion, the best looking UI that I've seen yet. I really wasn't a fan of the UI in Origins, but since Odyssey and now Valhalla, you can really see through each game the adjustments that they've made where it was necessary. It's more straightforward to navigate, and it looks super clean. You really won't have any issues figuring out where anything is or having anything to be too cluttered. I do wish you could hop box to box with a D-pad on controller, which honestly may be a toggle option that I missed during the closed beta, or it's just not in access currently and will be maybe added in, but I didn't really like the scrolling over with the Joy-Cons, and obviously on PC it's easier with the mouse to navigate as such. I think it would be quicker and cleaner if you could use the D-pad there versus the joystick. Something super minor. The character models themselves, I was very concerned with during the gameplay trailer originally. It was something I expressed a lot, and I felt kind of like a bitch to do it, but it looked really bad. I know it's a work in progress, but damn it, I just was really concerned for release at that point. Between the lip tracking, the super flat looking characters, and the lack of elements added, I figured it'd be rough towards the end. Surprisingly though, the sectioned off gameplay that we were allotted to play during the closed beta was actually very well done. Even some of the in-world, very minor characters seemed to have really good lip tracking, which caught me very off guard. Might be the best lip tracking out of any Assassin's Creed game that I've actually seen yet. That and the character animation looks very fluid too. It's not stiff. Definitely was something I felt Odyssey had struggled with. At random points, even the main character's lip syncing was off, whether it be a main quest or a side quest, or side quests were completely off on lip tracking in general. So considering some in-world side characters had really good lip tracking, I'm hoping that the whole game it's got pretty solid lip tracking. We'll see. I would say it's definitely a good sign though. Now, this wasn't really a topic I thought I'd bring up, especially on its own, but I genuinely was surprised with the dynamics between characters that we were given and the main character themselves. I can't show specifics of voice lines, but wow, did the character dynamics feel fleshed out. That was a complaint I'd had with Odyssey, was that even though Alexios was Cassandra's brother, Cassandra was the person I chose to end up playing, that connection didn't really feel too strong to me personally, even though it was by blood. It was obviously a chunk of the main plot. I just didn't really care for it, nor did it just felt more annoying really than anything. It felt kind of off with most of the character dynamics, even though it was really a fun game. I genuinely enjoyed Odyssey, minus the optimization and just the wonkiness to it. The dynamics between characters in Valhalla feels way more realistic and not robotic at all. During cutscenes, I felt like I was playing Witcher 3 or enjoying some of the Game of Thrones banter between the characters. And this is going to be a bold statement, but I don't know if I've enjoyed the personality of a main character since the Assassin's Creed games of having Ezio in them. And Eivor oddly reminds me a lot of Ezio. I feel like a lot of it is the banter and the bluntness, but it made me very happy to see, and it caught me pretty off guard. The character is strong, blunt, banters a lot, witty, sarcastic, and seems pretty neutral in matters, making me think that maybe the Creed will also be more involved lore-wise, since Eivor seems to look at things so much more objectively. It makes it known that she seems to be more of a neutral party, though obviously she's still a Viking, or he, depending on who you end up playing. But I could also end up being wrong, as we've only gotten to see a small glimpse of the overall picture. Just was quite a bit of how I felt. But I'll get more into my theory of why I think the Creed is more involved and whatnot once I get into the gameplay bit, because there was something that I did notice. So I have a little bit of a theory to that. So the storyline, we were only given so much to work with, obviously. However, I still felt way more invested in the story already just due to the dynamics between the characters. You're obviously Vikings who are in England at war with the Anglo-Saxons, but the specific battles are fun and interesting. It's neat to see how much more the Vikings were brought to life in this video game. The game has a lot of exploring, but it definitely feels like the game is more tailored to the main story being the heaviest focal point. The main storyline does seem tied into raiding regions throughout the game. Makes it feel like you're more at a chapter select point, so if you want to go off and explore for a bit before looking into your main quest on the map, you can. In terms of side quests, they're not in your face like the main quest is. Everything else is exploratory, which I feel is a nice middle ground. It also rewards not having everything in your face, but still forcing you to go and explore if you want. Now, the big behemoth topic itself, gameplay, the thing that everyone is obviously pretty concerned about. I've got a lot of good and bad to say about this, so let's go ahead and talk about the combat system first. The combat system is pretty fun for the most part. You have some basic light and heavy attacks for both melee and ranged. You also have an adrenaline gauge that fills with combos and hits, but also decreases if you get hit. Essentially, if you want to do special attacks and damage, you have to get good with the combat. It feels rewarding, especially when you don't have auto health regen either. I do have a personally pretty big complaint with the bow shooting though. Maybe I've gotten used to PC, but on console, that bow did not feel like it was made for controller. The best comparison I can make is the aiming on a Rockstar video game on console versus PC. If you played Red Dead Redemption 2 or GTA 5 on both console and PC, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The aiming with the bow just feels off. On console, it feels like it's made for PC. I'm not sure if aim assist has even been thrown into the game yet. Maybe it's something that gets put in at the final stages. I'm not entirely sure on that point of development, but it definitely feels like controller needs it badly if it's not already in. Maybe I'm mistaken and it isn't, and it just feels really gross, but I just do not feel like aim assist was in the game for controller yet. It felt awful to move around with the bow. Maybe upping the sensitivity would have helped a tiny bit, but I think it really needs to be worked on for console side of things at the very least. This though, as it's a pretty big combat mechanic, I feel like it could ruin the console enjoyment for me personally, especially considering that the PC has tended to not be optimized compared to console games in the past. I really don't want to have to use controller if I don't have to and deal with that bow mechanic. I feel like if it's that wonky, it's going to be a bit of a bummer if it's not optimized on PC and I'm going to have to default to playing this game on console. But I'm going to hope it gets cleaned up. It was something I did make note of to them along with quite a few other things. The leveling system has changed quite a bit for gameplay. You have quite a bit more customizability in your playstyle now. You have 2 trees, a skill tree and an ability tree. Abilities you gain by venturing around the world and are what you use when your adrenaline gauge is full, aka the abilities I discussed that you get rewarded for basically being good at combat and you can perform heavy damage and or special moves. The skill tree, however, differs in the aspect of being able to work towards both unlockable combat skills that are not based on ability or are passive abilities. I didn't get to seeing all the options on the skill tree, but damn, there's a lot. Depending on the type of boss and mobs that you're going up against, you may want to build towards a different skill tree pattern and whatnot. Something to sit and mull over when you're leveling up on what style of combat you want to work towards. I know myself, I tend to go for stealth for old time's sake. Raid mechanics are enjoyable and pretty straightforward to play as they seemed in the demo. They're a lot more cleaned up looking. I will say I kind of wish it was a bit more involved rather than to just protect the boys to breaking down the big bad door, but on the same token, I don't mind not sitting in that scenario raiding for more than 10 to 15 minutes. Back to the bow comment though, unfortunately, I felt like I had to go up a melee on top a lot and it made it way more tedious than it needed to be, and when circumstances where the bow would have been a lot more fitting because you can't properly aim from too far away with the sight and the lack of aim assist. Maybe a bow ability unlock would have helped where you can maybe zoom in at some point too, or maybe there is something on the skill tree versus the ability tree that I obviously didn't get to see in the closed beta. I feel like there almost has to be, especially based on the skill tree abilities that were in the past 2 AC titles with bows. With how it's set up, at minimum to help with combat, that needs to be in there, which I'm hoping and assuming it's going to be, but we'll see more on release. The main base is a lot more involved than I expected, and I had to actually do a double take at one point when I was running through the camp. There's a Brotherhood tent at your camp. I'm really hoping that this means that the Creed is going to be more involved. After reading the note in the tent though, it's got to be more into the main storyline since it involves Eivor's character's story mentioned in the note. This bit has me super excited in the hopes that the Brotherhood lore gets brought back and is going to be more involved, because as we know, it's been pretty miss on lore aspects since the Ezio trilogy. We'll see though, maybe that's not going to be the case and I'm getting my hopes up for nothing. But as I was saying about the tents in general too, as you level up your base, you appear to be able to unlock features and possible side quests based on how the residents talk throughout the area. There's a lot of customizability to design and upgrade at your base, and actually seems based on the item selection menu to decorate that you'll most likely be able to unlock, discover, or maybe even buy decoration items for your base as you carry on throughout the story. I'm hoping it's more of the discover option though, but we'll see. Either way, nice little touch considering I figured it was going to be purely level up building scenarios. Last but not least, game travel. Since we're Vikings sailing down rivers, it doesn't appear we're really going to have any boat combat most of the time based on the map and the scenarios that we're given. It's just more of a means of transport for rivers. That and the horses. I will say, wow, is auto travel function nicer than I expected it to be. Especially when you're not really in the mood to explore or it's a bit further away. Didn't think it'd be that useful, but it's a super nice quality of life change for both the horse and boat. You can even set to travel to random points altogether, and not just the main quests on the map for auto travel. One current con of the game is that the fast travel takes a very, very long time to load up. It's worth it to just sail your ship over a long distance than it is to fast travel. I'm assuming this is due to the fact that it's a test scenario and files maybe aren't compressed fully yet, so it's doing more work than it needs to even load everything back up, but I could be wrong. I'm expecting this is going to get fixed, as I don't see why it wouldn't. If it is still like this on launch and you notice it pretty immediately, I'd recommend trying to avoid using it and just messing with auto travel. All in all, I'm pretty excited for Valhalla with everything I've gotten to see and play. I think Valhalla will end up being, at least story and gameplay wise, a lot more enjoyable than a lot of the previous AC titles, including Odyssey. It seems Ubisoft has listened to a lot of the feedback for Valhalla on trying to focus more on the main story itself. As said above, the building of the characters I think says a lot and already shows that it has quite a bit of potential compared to everything else. It has some cleaning up to do, but I am excited. I'm most concerned for the optimization and if PC is actually going to be a finished product or not this time. Hope this video is helpful on if you're trying to decide whether to get Valhalla as the date draws closer. If it was helpful for you at all, feel free to let me know with a thumbs up on the video. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts now with more information being given to us on if you're more excited for Valhalla or if there's anything that you've seen that you hope gets adjusted as well. The release date is November 10th. If you're still not sure when the date rolls around, or you would like to watch someone play it when it comes out, I will be live streaming it over on my Twitch channel for a live review. But I also will be doing a review on here once I finish Valhalla. Thank you guys for watching. All my social media is the exact same as my YouTube here, so it's super easy to find me on everything. Kruzadar, Kruzadar. I'll have it all linked down below in the description as per usual. Hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and happy gaming.